Ambitious Milan doesn't even make it to Panettone season, because after Milan, Inter too pack their bags in Riyadh and fly home for Christmas. The Supercoppa Italiana, this Monday, will be contested by Napoli and Bologna. Yes, Napoli, the Serie A champions, and Bologna, a Bologna side that now has the chance to complete a historic double after already lifting the Coppa Italia last season. And before we even get tactical, can we talk about those crowds? Because if Napoli, Milan and Inter together cannot fill a 25,000 seat stadium, then maybe, just maybe, the Italian FA needs to rethink how it sells its product abroad. No disrespect to Saudi Arabia, of course, but this is about identity, atmosphere and connection. And I think we all agree here that Italian football has a marketing problem. We've known it for years, this just made it visible. Now, right, let's get into the football. Welcome to Tactics Imperivm. Gianluca Lia, your host, as always. Thank you very much for being here. And a special mention to Serie A Spotlight, who powers this podcast. Make sure to follow them, follow their content across all social media platforms. And let me start with a simple question for you. In Napoli versus Milan, did you notice that Napoli scored the same goal twice, same lane, same timing, same outcome? Spinazzola finds space, a vertical ball, Højlund attacks it with his pace and body, goal. Twice. And that's not coincidence, that is structure. Napoli's 3-4-3 is quietly paying dividends, not because it's spectacular, but because it creates clarity. Now, as you all know, a lot has already been said about Højlund, so I won't repeat the obvious. Instead, let me frame it differently. 5 days prior to Napoli against Milan, in Udine, he looked lost, completely lost. Missed a goal that can haunt a striker for months, sometimes even years. Fast forward to Riyadh, fast forward to Saudi Arabia, he is aggressive, secure with his back to goal, always a reference point. This doesn't mean everything is fixed, but the context matters. Because the Supercoppa is a strange competition, emotionally distant, dropped right in the middle of the season, and played far from home. And that matters too. So maybe this wasn't the start of Højlund's Napoli career, but it was a reminder of what he can be when conditions help him. After the match, Allegri said something very Allegri. They defended better, they deserved to win. We conceded 2 goals we could have handled better. Surprised? Probably not. But here's the key point of the match. Allegri's Milan is built on defensive certainty. And that is not rhetoric. It's the foundation of the entire project of Allegri. And when that certainty disappears, everything collapses. And I believe that Milan looked toothless going forward, not because of bad attackers, but because they didn't trust what was behind them. You know that feeling when you step onto a shake ladder, you don't climb confidently, you hesitate. And I believe that was Milan in the final third. Now, let's speak about the tactical issues in itself, simplified, of course. Milan chose not to adjust to Conte's new 3-4-3. Napoli's attacking midfielders, Neres and Elmas, were given surprising freedom. They decided on the fly whether to receive between the lines, drift wide, overload with the wing back. And that freedom broke Milan's right side. Not because the defenders were bad, but because they were forced into binary decisions. Either step out or hold position. And I think that Napoli manipulated the indecision of the Milan defenders brilliantly. And once Pavlovic and Estupinian started hesitating, everything followed. So here's a micro story. On the second goal, there's a split second where the winner thinks he can step in front of Højlund. He reads it, he moves. And then Spinazzola's pass is sharper, faster and tighter than expected. That moment is gone. At this level, one wrong step is enough. And it was a repetition of the first goal. While in the first goal, Elmas tucked inside and pulled Tomori with him, in the second goal, Elmas drifted wide, pulled Tomori with him, and in both situations it opened the passing lane to Spinazzola to find Højlund in space one-on-one against the winner. From then onwards it was easy between the lines for Højlund to beat the winner with his physicality and speed, and his goal intuition made sure that he find the net twice. Off to Bologna versus Inter, which was winning without beauty and winning with, not the best of penalty shootouts, in all fairness. Now, Bologna didn't win by being themselves, and I think that was surprising. They won by being something else. They didn't dominate. They didn't press high all game. They didn't enchant. And that's exactly why they deserve applause. Because they conceded after 2 minutes. They did not panic. They stayed organized. They suffered. They equalized. And when Inter pushed, they resist. And that, I think that is growth. That is growth of a team that is aware of its abilities, that is aware of its potential. And this is a team that is learning how to win ugly as well. And then the penalties. Immobile steps up, goal, full circle. One has to keep in mind that Immobile was a Simone Inzaghi striker as well. And at the same time, him returning to Italian football and him being decisive in a match like this, I think it's a feel-good story as well for us Calcio fans. For Inter, now let's flip the script and speak about Inter. I think this elimination feels a bit absurd. A VAR given penalty, a VAR taken penalty, the missed chances, the poor finishing. Is their first draw of the season and somehow their worst result. And why? Because it reveals a problem of game management. You score after 2 minutes, you should control the night. Instead, Inter drifted. Bissek gives away another penalty, finishing disappears, Ravaglia then grows into the match, which makes things worse for Inter. And I think Kivo didn't dramatize it after the match, and probably he's right. But here's the uncomfortable question. Can a team with Scudetto ambitions afford this level of superficiality in key moments? And this happened also in the Serie A matches, which I had spoken also about in previous episodes. I want you to think about this. In the meantime, his fellow coach, his fellow colleague, Vincenzo Italiano, he's heading into the 8th final, a final specialist. And I had spoken to the guys from Serie A Spotlight in a special podcast before the season, that one of my favorite coaches is Vincenzo Italiano. He makes teams play very good and he reaches finals. Now, whether he wins them or loses them doesn't really mean that he's a good coach, because you have to put everything into context. The coaches, the teams he managed, the teams he faced, what was the competition, and so on. But going into the 8th final, from Serie D with Arzignano in 2018 to a Supercoppa final now with Bologna in Saudi Arabia, just months after winning the Coppa Italia, I think he is a manager who keeps stepping into finals because his teams switch on. That's important. The teams switch on when it matters, and I believe that Inter's keyword is not switching on when it matters. Actually, it's switching off when it matters, both in the league and now also in the Super Cup. As Italiano said after the match, we went behind immediately, but we stayed in the game. 1 half for us, 1 for Inter, and obviously then the penalties. That is maturity, that is belief. Now, let me leave you with 2 questions. First, is Napoli quietly building something more dangerous than it looks? One has to keep in mind that Romelu Lukaku has just returned, who was on the bench for the semi-final against Milan, but I believe he's not 100% fit, and obviously they will be awaiting the returns of Anguissa and Kevin De Bruyne, who, if both of them return in their best possible shape, that will feel like 2 new winter signings for them, especially in the run of the season. And is Bologna now officially more than just a beautiful story? Because trophies do not care about aesthetics, they care about the moments. So my final takeaways for this episode are: Inter had control, Milan had doubt, Napoli had clarity, and Bologna had belief. And in football, belief and clarity travel better than possession. Thank you guys, alla prossima.